Hi, welcome to Breakthrough Ideas and Training webinar. I'm Cordell Riley, President of Total Training. My pleasure to be with you today. Also my pleasure to welcome Dan Elzer to the session of the Training Academy. Dan, welcome.
Well, thank you, Cordell. I appreciate the opportunity to join you on this project of yours.
Good deal. Very excited that you took time. Very, very excited. Dan, I'd be remiss if I didn't start out. Obviously, I see Training Academy. I see your studio set up there, and I'm really impressed with this. Talk just a little bit about your studio that you're doing this session from today.
Yes, this is our live set studio. This is where we do all of our virtual training. Being involved in training for 27 years now, the virtual end of training, as you know, has become more and more prevalent to save money and be more efficient. And we just believed here at the Training Academy, because one of our principles is to move the needle, that some of the traditional platforms weren't working for us. So it drove us to go through some variations, and we ended up with this platform where we can do live set, monitors, polling, questioning, interaction with individuals either in an auditorium or at their home, on any device. So we've really put a lot of time and money behind creating what we feel is just a much better mousetrap when it comes to delivering training.
Good deal. Well, it looks very, very nice, my friend. Very, very nice.
Thank you.
So, Dan, tell the group a little bit more about what does the Training Academy do? What do you guys offer?
We are, first and foremost, we're a technique mastery company. When we get involved either in leadership, management, sales management, or actual salespeople and processes, we're driven behind what we call technique mastery. And technique mastery is the ability to duplicate your profession on demand. What I've found in working with companies and helping them either train with them or for them or develop training is a lot of training gets lost in the weeds, and we don't get the outcomes that we were looking for. So we're kind of known for cutting through the fluff, getting to where the rubber meets the road, and making sure anybody who we work with can actually perform and do the skills, the techniques, change the habits to make sure that they can have technique mastery.
Super. Technique mastery. Super, super. So, Dan, one of the things that I typically like to do as I'm starting these sessions is, obviously, you have a lot of experience in training, and that's obviously what your company does. And obviously, on this session, we have a lot of training professionals that are really trying to hone and enhance their skills. Just talk for a second about the importance that you think training plays inside an organization, company, as they're looking to get to that next level, meet their corporate objectives. How important do you think training is inside of an organization?
I believe it's probably the most important thing. As a business owner of multiple businesses, people always ask, what's most important to me? And I always say the first thing is leadership and financial management, so you stay in business. Second to that is you're only in business selling a product or a service, so training to me becomes the next most important thing. And if you're not having an ongoing program of training within an organization, I truly believe that you're slowly deteriorating, because the market is dynamic, it's always changing, and if there isn't someone there leading, training, and coaching the staff, the sales force, you truly are losing ground against your competition. So it's one of the most valuable assets I think an organization can have, but sadly, as I'm sure you're aware, Cordell, all too often it's the first thing people cut when times get tough.
Yeah, yeah. Dan, what do you think about that? Do you think training is starting to get more of a seat at the table now? As you look around the executive suite and the C-suite, do you think training is starting to get more of its share of time at the table to really look and talk about how the organization move forward?
Yeah, we're seeing it from our customers and the people that we work with, and I think because where the economy's going, confidences have changed, I think quickly organizations are realizing that they're not accomplishing some of the things that they want to in the marketplace. So I believe that training has very much so become one of the seats at the table, if you would, and which I think, why you're doing this, which I think is excellent for these organizations. I think a lot of places are in need of revamping or relearning how training should be delivered. Many times I see in organizations, when we talk about, when we get into the actual challenges, I see organizations do a lot of training, but again, they're not getting their outcomes. And so I think today it definitely has a seat at the table. And it's something that if people aren't doing yet, I truly believe that they're, again, falling behind because, your competition's doing it. They're training their people. They're getting them motivated, proactive, causing things to happen. And if you're not, then you're falling behind.
Yeah. Dan, something that you mentioned getting the outcomes. And as I was reading your bio and prepping for this session, I saw a quote, and I want to make sure I get it right here. Actionable content that moves the needle is something that I've referenced in your material. So actionable content that moves the needle. And one of the things, Dan, that you probably have seen this too, Training Magazine recently came out with their kind of top trends in training for 2015. And one of the items that they talked about was aligning training with business goals and measuring the results. So I kind of look at your actionable content that moves the needle. What does that mean, Dan?
Well, I think it begins in the development of training. When you develop a program, we always begin, and we coach others to begin with the outcome, as you were just saying. What are we trying to accomplish? And then backing into that, how you can structure a training to cause that outcome to occur. But when we talk about actionable content that moves the needle, one of the things we find, and for the trainers and directors and CEOs that might be watching this, one of the things we find in internal training is that there are some things that top producing people, whether it's in leadership, management, or sales, some of the things they do are hard to emulate or hard to teach. So they end up teaching more philosophy or more best practice than actual things that are actionable, things that can be learned, that can be practiced repetitively, that then can be measured with an outcome. So when we talk about actionable content that you can go out and deliver and actually cause the needle to move, we're talking about really drilling down on what that outcome is and then backing into the skills, techniques. And one of the things, Cordell, that, again, people miss are the habits of the organization. When you take people and put them into a training program, I always say it causes these people to be the smartest people in the room when you're sitting in a training event. As soon as that person walks out of the training event, the thing that will take over is their habit, not the training they just had. So actionable content and moving the needle takes training beyond the training room into the ability to have measurement, follow-up, follow-through, testing, to make sure that the outcome is achieved, that the goal is achieved, and that the habits are changed to be able to actually do it in a repetitive way without thought. A habit is something that happens automatically. Can this person leave this training with this objective and outcome and be able to perform, which brings me back to technique mastery. Can they perform on demand that skill, technique, or strategy?
Okay. So Dan, do you think, obviously your organization is focused on that and it's moving us forward, and again, Training Magazine saw it as one of the top trends. Do you think most trainers are really grasping that? I still, in this day and age, as I look at things taking place from a training perspective, I still see a lot of training for the sake of training, and I certainly understand there are compliance things that we have to do and check the box, but do you think that is the culture starting to move in the training world, that people are really becoming more results focused? Again, I know you guys are championing and trying to move it. Do you see it happening?
No, I don't. And I'm glad you asked that. And to be just, straight, and that's what another thing we're known for is, we cut right through it.
Yeah.
It is not happening. And I think it's not happening for two reasons. And again, if I have a trainer sitting out there or someone running the training department, I believe that you have to create an environment within your training department or with your trainers for them to be able to admit what they don't know. Because what I find is trainers will fall back on what they're most comfortable with, what's in their wheelhouse. Got a client right now that we're consulting with. We're out of a multi-module program within this large company. It's an international company. The people that developed it, 3 of the modules just don't accomplish their goal. And what we found is it wasn't that they didn't want to accomplish the goal. It was that the trainers did not, one, realize they weren't getting there, 2, understand the skills and strategies that were missing within those modules, and then 3, were uncomfortable themselves to be able to be the expert in front of people delivering and training on those pieces that were necessary. So instead, they went with, I call it the wow effect or the best practice effect, or this is how we did it, and it's succeeded before. Problem with that is I might get people to sit and listen or to participate, and again, in the training environment go, hey, this is great, but then they walk away unable to duplicate that. So I
Yeah.
think that they're realizing it, but I think that until we really get honest with where we are with our internal teams and their abilities and training the trainer, if you would, we're missing some stuff that's causing us to not hit those goals and objectives.
Yeah. So Dan, I've heard you talk about this a couple times on this session. You talked about changing habits or habits. You talk about when somebody walks away from a session, and I'm going to call a training session an event. You know, they come to an event and they get esprit de corps and they get all excited about things, but then the habits don't change. They walk away and nothing happens differently. Give me how do we, keep it going? How do we work on those habits? How do we make sure that we really are moving it? How do we affect that? How do we do something different?
Again, I think it starts in the structure, structuring the class. I like to share with people, if you're going to be in charge of a training department, when was the last time you immersed yourself in training? I think trainers attending training, not for the purpose of learning specifically what that person's training, but to start to learn how are you receiving training, what's working for you, what's not, to start to emulate, break down, and understand the delivery process. So first and foremost, again, that structure. And here at the Training Academy with our instructors, we go by what we call it the 3 E's. And the 3 E's are you have to be able to educate people, entertain people, and energize people. What I've found in whether it's leadership, management, sales management, or sales, I found that if you go educate people, they basically listen to some, fall asleep, don't retain. It's great material, but it's not actionable then. Then we have people that entertain. If you entertain people, they get excited, they say it was a great event, but they can't perform. And then the energy side of it is to get people to what I call having the courage to take action. So when we model our programs around the 3 E's, there has to be an educational portion in there, which has drilling, rehearsing, role play, if you would. It has to have energy, where the person feels good, feels safe, can start to practice this. And it has to have some entertainment value to where there's a little bit of laugh, a little bit of lightheartedness, if you would, to keep people going through the program. So that, to me, those 3 E's, when we really define them and teach them to trainers, is so important for them to be good deliverers at the front of the room to get that to happen. But then I truly believe it's post-work, Cordell, and it's that ability to have post-work that measures or retests what that person was supposed to do or learn, to then have a safe haven for when the person does not achieve mastery, being able to duplicate on demand, that there is a channel now within training to go back and pick up on what was lost or what was not mastered. So it's multifaceted, where a lot of training is, this is module 101, then 202, and then 303, and now you're ready to go. I just don't find that old-fashioned approach working in the dynamics that we have today out there in the business world.
Yeah, yeah. Dan, I love the way you described it with the 3 E's. I've certainly heard each one of those talked about from a component perspective, but certainly put them all together, I think it can be very powerful. So I love the way you're approaching that. So Dan, you've been around training for quite some time. What are some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing out there from a training perspective today? Just some of the biggest challenges that you're seeing out there.
I think that we are, as you said, we're training for the sake of training. And I think that's one of the largest challenges is we're not training. Another one of our sayings here at the Training Academy is be on purpose. To train on purpose, to target train, if you would, I think is where we're not going. And again, I come back to, do we truly have an outcome? Do we truly have a structure that we've put together where we're clear on what we're trying to do? Having been involved in numerous consulting situations with other companies, helping them build training, I find when you get all these people in here starting to talk about, what we want this training to be, we end up with a lot of information that doesn't actually address the outcome. So one of the challenges, again, I think it has to be an outcome-driven event. A second challenge that I see out there is starting to, again, rely on virtual training. I think, one, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a double-edged sword. Virtual training requires a whole different set of skills to deliver it, with a whole different set of interactions to make sure that people retain it. So just moving to a virtual platform of any kind and not really breaking down that program again and making sure it's going to be received properly from a virtual format, I think can be incredibly dangerous. And then I think a missed component is the opportunity to use video to actually be a reinforcement tool after class as a post-assist to training, and creating modules that are post a event that are very specific to what we know challenges are that people don't pick up on. So those are some of the challenges I see out there. And Cordell, one of the biggest ones is I don't know how many people have really understood or have immersed themselves in adult learning and understanding how people learn. If we're not careful there too, we can do some really great stuff that in the end does not get received by an adult because they learn differently than a child did.
Yeah, great point, great point. So Dan, I want to just drill in for a second on virtual training. Obviously, you've invested a lot, make sure that you're prepared for it. You talked about how do you deliver it differently, and you talked about the use of video. Can you give me a couple of examples in those two scenarios of how are you using video, and what are some different delivery techniques to make sure that you're engaging the audience in this type of virtual environment?
Number one, in the virtual environment, when we structure things, most people will take an existing program and say, we're going to take this into a virtual platform so we can reach further, cheaper, better, more efficient. I always say that less is more when it comes to a virtual approach. Since we don't keep the attention span of people as long in a virtual environment, since if we do too much preaching and not enough interacting, they'll be off, checking an email, taking a phone call, muting things. So less is more first. How can you take the content you were looking at and then take an honest approach to what is more important and what don't we have to talk about? Because I always say at the end of the day for a training division, what you don't teach, they don't know they missed. But if we teach too much in a virtual environment, they hear a lot of things but master none of it. So the first thing I would say is that. Then the things that you took out of the event, that you said, I don't need to really to do this live in the virtual world, those become, in my book, what these secondary modules can be, giving people the opportunity to watch a short video, short skill training or process training video, that then has behind it an exam or some type of accountability to make sure that they have learned. As long as that's tied into the content that you keep, I think that that's a huge improvement to the virtual training. Next is people have to understand that as you and I are right now in a video environment, your energy has to be different. You have to inflect different. You have to use your voice differently. If you want to keep the people engaged with you, you have to raise your energy level when you're in a video or on a virtual platform compared to being in person. So I think there's some physical things that you have to do to be a better presenter, and there's structural things you have to do so you're not just feature dumping on people, you're actually getting that needle to move.
Yeah, great stuff, Dan. So Dan, if we kind of had to, we talked about a lot of different things, a lot of great stuff. But we got a group of training professionals out here that have dedicated some time to kind of sit down and come and listen to this session so they can make themselves better. So if you had to give them a couple of things to really focus on if they wanted to take their training to the next level inside of their organization, what tips can you leave our audience with today that can really resonate with them to work on when they go back to their organizations?
First, I think that we have to, as a trainer, to invest in ourselves. We have to make sure that our delivery method is effective, that we understand, again, adult learning and how people learn, that we ourselves experience training. I find a lot of trainers get to the point where they stop experiencing training, and therefore they've got their way that they do things, and to not go out there and see others and experience things and challenge yourself to, God, that I really enjoyed that interaction. How can I emulate that? How can I bring it into the way I perform? So I think the first thing is that internal look at yourself to better yourself as a trainer. Secondly, I think that you slow things down. If you really want to get good at this, it's about slowing down the process from what you're trying to create, to creating it, to practicing it, and then having its delivery. The more that we practice what we're doing as trainers, the more we'll find. It's kind of like doing a pro forma on an idea. If you're good at doing a financial pro forma on an idea, some great ideas that you then break down in a narrative and numbers format, you get through with it and you go, this isn't a good idea, because at the end of the day, it's not working.
Yeah.
Well, I find the same thing will happen with training, that if you invest in yourself and you know you can deliver, and then you create this and you practice it and you take it through to the end, you might get to the end and go, this just doesn't feel like I'm hitting what I need. So be bold enough to go back and make change. And then in the end, when you start delivering a program, don't be afraid to change. Don't put it in the can and say this is it. It has to be able to be a live document, if you would. I truly believe that training, when you first create them, you have to be able to take feedback, results. Are we accomplishing the objective? Are we moving the needle? And when not, take that feedback and make adjustments to it before we go and send it out to all the trainers and say, now go run with this program. Really bulletproof the thing so you know it has legs, it will work for a long time, and it will accomplish its objective.
Good deal, good deal. Dan, some great comments. I've certainly enjoyed this, and I myself have learned some things from this, so thank you for the time and thank you for the effort. It's been a great session. I know, Dan, that you guys have an offer that you want to make available to our participants today. Can you share what that offer might be for our group here?
Certainly. What we're wanting to do for anyone that's participating and watching these series that you've put out is, from our studio here, from our interactive studio, we're going to offer, and we got it up on the board, and it will be at the end of this, folks, that you'll be able to see how to do this, how to get to it. But I'm going to do an interactive presentation and Q&A on how to move the needle. And basically drilling down a 1-hour event to drill down on how you can improve yourself as a trainer and how you can make sure that your outcomes actually move the needle and become known as somebody, hey, we're going to bring this person in because we know at the end of the day, our people have measurable and visible results. So we're offering this up on Monday, September 14th, 2015, at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It will go 11 to 12, 1 hour. You'll have the ability to communicate with me live, ask questions as we go through this event, and then we'll be recording that. And for people who might not have watched this before we do the live event, that event will still be available on the website that we'll post at the end of this video. That will still be available for you to visit any time to watch it again. So we're kind of hoping, Cordell, to give your people that are part of your of this program you're doing the opportunity, if they enjoyed what they heard from me, to come and interact with me live, and I can help them maybe get to that next level.
Good deal, Dan. That's a great offer. Thank you for that. I'm sure you get a lot of participants in that. Great stuff. Dan, thank you again. Very, very informative session. I appreciate you taking the time. Also want to thank our audience for joining today. Hopefully you found some things that can help you move forward. Please continue to come back and join us for other breakthrough ideas and training sessions. Take care.
Thanks.